How does Gottman go about determining whether a partner is in a healthy or unhealthy relationship? What negative signs does he look for? How does he detect their emotion? How does he conclude the overall health of each relationship? He has a couple discuss any topic from marriage that had become a point of contention for 15 minutes to an hour in his love lab. Hooks them up to wires that detect pulse rate and sweating, and videotapes the conversation. He can predict with 95% accuracy rate whether that couple will still be married 15 years later. If he watches a couple for 15 minutes, his success rate is around 90%. If viewed in 3 minutes of a couple talking, they could still predict with fairly impressive accuracy who was going to get divorced and who was going to make it. They read every emotional nuance in their faces. They focus on emotion and how it flips across the face. Stress picked up in sweat glands and surge in heart rate. In the case of the disasters, their heart rates were quick, their sweat glands were active, and their blood flow was fast. Following thousands of couples, Gottman found that the more psychologically active the couples were in the lab, the quicker their relationships deteriorated over time. Half the couples split up within the 15 years after their discussion was filmed. Half were still together. He does not find it necessary to observe them over many weeks and months to see them in every state. Happy, tired, angry, irritated, delighted, having a nervous breakdown. Perhaps if he did this, though, he could see who might be feeding the most arguments and triggering the most fights. And our discussion ends up being translated into a row of 1,800 numbers. Finding the pattern is difficult, so he focuses on finding the four horsemen of the apocalypse, which are defensiveness, stonewalling, criticism, and contempt. Contempt is usually displayed through eye-rolling or insults. Contempt affects immune systems. This type of couple gets more colds. If these horsemen of the apocalypse repeatedly occur, then the relationship begins to down spiral. Women tend to be more critical and men stonewall more often. The ratio of positive to negative emotion in a given encounter has to be at least 5-to-1 for the relationship to survive for the long term. Gottman did not need a lab with a coding system to predict divorce for a couple. When eavesdropping on a couple at a restaurant or anywhere else, he uses the technique thin slicing by focusing on the four horsemen. If Gottman observes one or both partners in a marriage showing contempt toward the other, he considers it the single most important sign that the marriage is in trouble. Contempt is any statement made from a higher level, a level of superiority that shatters the foundation of equality in which a marriage is founded on. With name-calling, each partner is placing themselves above the other person for dominance. There isn't any gender difference when it comes to contempt. Both female and males use it as a weapon equally. People who fight dirty often use displays of contempt as a weapon against their partner. If you can measure contempt, then you don't need to know the other horsemen of the apocalypse shown in a couple's relationship. Now that you know how the experiments were conducted and what the four horsemen of the apocalypse are, I'll provide an in-depth summary of the Gottman experiment on the four horsemen of the apocalypse so that you might identify them in your own relationship and make sure they don't become repetitive. Criticism. Attacking your partner's personality or character, usually with the intent of making someone right and someone wrong. Generalizations. You always, you never, you're the type of person who, why are you so? People who are focused on criticizing their partners miss 50% of positive things their partners are doing, and they see negatively when it's not present. Contempt. Attacking your partner's sense of self with the intention to insult or psychologically abuse him or her. Insults and name-calling. Hostile humor, sarcasm or mockery. Body language and tone of voice. Sneering, rolling your eyes, curling your upper lip. People who treat their partners with contempt not only kill the love in the relationship, but they also kill their partner's ability to fight off viruses and cancers. Being mean is the death of relationships. Defensiveness, seeing the self as the victim, warding off a perceived attack. Making excuses, such as external circumstances beyond your control forced you to act in a certain way. It's not my fault. I didn't. Cross-complaining, meeting your partner's complaint or criticism with a complaint of your own, essentially ignoring what your partner said. Disagreeing and then cross-complaining. That's not true. You're the one who, and I did this because you did that. Yes, butting. Start off agreeing but end up disagreeing. Repeating yourself without paying attention to what the other person is saying. Whining, it's not fair. Stonewalling, withdrawing from the relationship as a way to avoid conflict. Men are more likely to stonewall. People who give their partner the cold shoulder, deliberately ignoring the partner or responding minimally, damage the relationship by making their partner feel worthless and invisible, as if they're not there, not valued. Partners may think they are trying to be neutral, but stonewalling conveys disapproval, icy distance, separation, disconnection, and/or smugness. Stonewalling, by giving the silent treatment, can be a way to punish and take control of a situation. It can be used to fight back. Stony silence, changing the subject, removing yourself physically, the silent treatment. Like Gottman eavesdropping on couples to identify the Four Horsemen of the apocalypse, try to listen for these patterns during your next disagreement with your partner to make sure you aren't falling into a repetitive rhythm of the Four Horsemen, to ensure you keep your relationship safe and healthy.